The release of the 11 Nigerian troops should have closed the chapter. Instead, it opened a far more unsettling one. Their aircraft entered Burkina Faso's airspace without authorization, landed under circumstances that remain unclear to this day, and triggered an immediate military lockdown across the capital. For a region already fractured by tensions between ECOWAS and the Sahel states, the timing could not have been more dangerous. Officials described the landing as a technical emergency. Yet military analysts across the continent quickly pointed to inconsistencies in the flight path, irregularities in the troop manifest, and the profound silence that followed the incident. Inside Burkina Faso's security apparatus, the question was never about why the plane malfunctioned. It was about why it appeared where it did, carrying soldiers whose mission remained deliberately obscure. Releasing the troops was not weakness, it was calculation made after rapid intelligence assessment and a clear message to every external power watching West Africa's new alignment take shape. The soldiers returned home, but the doubts, the suspicions, and the geopolitical ripples remained behind, and those ripples are now shaping everything that follows. I speak to you today because this incident did not materialize from nowhere. Nothing in our region happens without a chain of hidden actions beneath the surface. When that military aircraft entered our airspace without authorization, every alarm we had constructed for the protection of our sovereignty activated simultaneously. As the leader of this nation, I do not possess the luxury of assuming good intentions. I must defend the integrity of our land, our people, and our future with absolute clarity. When my commanders informed me that the plane had landed in Ouagadougou, I asked a single question that shaped everything that followed. Are we dealing with an accident, or are we dealing with a mission that was never properly declared? That question became the foundation for every decision we made in the hours and days ahead. The soldiers were detained, questioned thoroughly, and assessed from every angle. Not because we sought unnecessary confrontation with Nigeria, but because Burkina Faso has reached a critical point where we allow absolutely no room for uncertainty. The Sahel stands under pressure from every conceivable direction. Any miscalculation, any moment of weakness can open the door to destabilization that costs lives. People outside our borders interpreted the release of the troops as the end of the matter, as if the incident could be wrapped up with diplomatic pleasantries and routine statements. They fundamentally misunderstood what was happening. What unfolded inside our operations room revealed far more than any public statement could convey. The inconsistencies in the flight report troubled my intelligence chiefs immediately. The unusual route deviated from standard aviation corridors. The silence from those who should have informed us ahead of time spoke volumes about coordination failures or deliberate omissions. These details forced us to treat the event as a potential security breach rather than a simple mechanical malfunction. We needed absolute clarity before we allowed anyone to return home. Some observers, particularly those comfortable in distant capitals, will claim we acted aggressively or overreacted to a minor incident. I say we acted with the responsibility that sovereignty demands. Burkina Faso has been targeted before by hidden agendas, by unannounced flights that carry purposes we only discovered later, by intelligence operations carefully masked as humanitarian movements or routine logistics. I carry the memory of every incident that cost our soldiers their lives, every moment when past governments trusted the wrong forces and paid the price in blood and instability. I refuse to repeat the catastrophic errors of leaders who chose comfort over vigilance, who accepted surface explanations while deeper games unfolded beneath their watch. Releasing the troops after our assessment was complete was not an act of diplomatic softness or fear of confrontation. It was a decision grounded firmly in the information we had gathered and the broader stability we intend to maintain within the Sahel Alliance. We demonstrated through our actions that we will respond with absolute firmness when our sovereignty faces any breach. Yet we also showed that we will choose measured diplomacy when the truth clears away the initial fog of confusion. But let me speak with complete clarity to every neighbor state and every external power currently watching our region. Burkina Faso will question anything and anyone that threatens our security framework. We will challenge anyone who tests our borders without proper authorization, and we will respond with unity, discipline, and unshakable conviction. This incident represents only the beginning of a larger strategic game unfolding around us, and I intend to expose that game systematically, piece by careful piece. When the plane touched down without clearance on our soil, it was not the physical aircraft that concerned me most deeply. It was the silence that followed in the hours afterward. In West African geopolitics, silence is rarely accidental or meaningless. It usually signals hesitation, internal confusion, or a deliberate attempt to conceal true intentions while other actors assess the situation. For several critical hours, neither Abuja nor ECOWAS leadership provided any clear explanation for the presence of Nigerian military personnel on Burkinabé soil. That silence communicated something profound to me. It told me that something was unfolding behind closed diplomatic doors, something that required careful coordination or damage control, and it became my absolute responsibility to understand exactly what was happening. Inside our military command center, every available detail was placed under intense scrutiny by our most experienced analysts. The flight's documented path did not align with the official story being constructed for public consumption. The communication log showed irregular pauses at critical moments, gaps that raised immediate questions about what was being discussed or decided during those intervals. Even the reported mechanical state of the aircraft itself raised fundamental questions about whether the malfunction was genuinely technical in nature or being used strategically as convenient cover for an operation with entirely different objectives. I instructed my generals with absolute clarity that Burkina Faso would not accept narratives that fail to align with verifiable facts. We have survived too much calculated deception, too many layers of manipulation, to return blindly to an era of unquestioning trust in official explanations. During the systematic questioning of the 11 soldiers, my priority was never to humiliate these men or to manufacture unnecessary conflict with Nigeria as a nation. My singular focus was establishing absolute clarity in a regional environment where misinformation is regularly deployed as a strategic weapon by various actors. The soldiers themselves appeared professionally disciplined but notably uncertain about how much information they were permitted to reveal about their mission parameters. That hesitation alone signaled to our interrogators that the operation carried layers of complexity beyond what had been shared in any public statements. I will not disclose every specific detail of what our intelligence services learned during those sessions. Not because I feared diplomatic consequences or external pressure, but because genuine national security demands a level of operational discretion that protects our methods and our sources. Yet I can state this with complete confidence. There were operational elements and circumstantial factors that simply did not align with the story of a simple emergency landing caused by mechanical failure. Our ultimate decision to release the troops came after weighing three critical strategic considerations that shaped our calculus. First, escalating the situation through prolonged detention would have opened convenient doors for ECOWAS actors who remain eager for any excuse to portray Burkina Faso as dangerously unstable or unpredictable. Second, the Sahel Alliance fundamentally values predictable cooperation and measured responses within the region, even when significant tensions arise between member states. Third, and perhaps most importantly, we had already achieved what mattered most from a sovereignty perspective. We asserted our absolute right to question any military presence on our territory, and we made it unambiguously clear that no armed force enters Burkinabé airspace without facing immediate accountability and thorough explanation. I chose to release the soldiers because Burkina Faso had already won the most important battle in this incident. We demonstrated operational discipline, intelligence capability, and decisive control under pressure. We showed the entire continent that the new Sahel does not panic when tested, does not bow to external pressure, and does not react blindly based on emotion or incomplete information. But our investigation also uncovered troubling signals, suggesting this incident forms part of a wider operational pattern, a pattern that directly threatens the emerging balance of power across West Africa. And that pattern now demands systematic attention and coordinated response. In the days immediately following the release of the Nigerian troops, many international observers asked why Burkina Faso reacted with such decisive firmness to what they characterized as a minor incident. These critics conveniently forget that our nation now stands at the geographic and strategic center of a silent contest for regional influence throughout the Sahel. Every move on our soil, every unexplained presence, every deviation from established protocols gets watched carefully, interpreted through multiple lenses, and measured by external actors who desperately want to shape West Africa's political future without ever openly acknowledging their involvement. This fundamental reality is why I maintain that the incident was never an isolated mistake or simple miscommunication. It was a calculated test of our resolve. Someone wanted to observe precisely how far Burkina Faso would allow its hard-won sovereignty to be stretched or compromised. The pattern has been undeniably clear for months to anyone paying systematic attention. Multiple flights have been detected, skirting dangerously close to our restricted airspace zones. Intelligence reports from our regional partners show unusual coordination patterns between foreign operatives and specific political actors within ECOWAS structures. Public statements from certain ECOWAS officials hint at external pressures and agendas that do not remotely match their official diplomatic messaging. These signals form a coherent chain of activity, and the unauthorized landing fit disturbingly well into that established chain. I recognized the significance immediately when my commanders first informed me of the aircraft's registration details and flight origin. What troubled me most profoundly was not the physical presence of the soldiers themselves, but the distinct possibility that their unexpected arrival was deliberately designed to collect intelligence about our defensive capabilities or to assess our military readiness and response protocols. Nation-states have employed precisely such tactics for decades across every continent. A conveniently timed emergency landing becomes useful cover for observing how quickly defenses activate, testing the efficiency of command structures, or measuring the degree of political unity within a government under sudden pressure. Burkina Faso cannot afford to casually ignore these operational possibilities, especially when we know that hostile forces constantly hope for even the smallest visible crack in our national resolve or leadership cohesion. Inside Nigeria itself, there exist political factions actively pushing for closer alignment with foreign interests that explicitly oppose the Sahel Alliance and everything it represents. I do not blame or criticize the Nigerian people themselves, who remain our brothers and natural partners in African development. I speak specifically of entrenched political forces who still desperately cling to the toxic idea that West Africa must remain permanently dependent on external powers, perpetually divided along colonial lines, and strategically vulnerable to outside manipulation. These groups understand clearly that a genuinely united Sahel directly challenges their influence and threatens the networks they have carefully constructed over decades. So they watch us with intense focus. They probe our defenses looking for weaknesses. They wait patiently for any opportunity to exploit divisions or create new fractures. This geopolitical reality is precisely why our response had to be both firm and carefully calibrated. We acted decisively but never recklessly. We allowed no internal chaos, no public panic, and no emotional overreaction that could be weaponized against us in international forums. My intention throughout was elegantly simple in conception but demanding in execution. Burkina Faso must demonstrate convincingly that we are no longer a weak state that can be casually manipulated, intimidated, or tested without consequence. Every decision, every public statement, every operational move must reflect genuine strength married to strategic clarity. The release of the soldiers was never a signal that the matter had been forgotten or fully resolved. It was a carefully calculated message to every watching power that Burkina Faso sees clearly the broader game currently in motion across our region, understands the stakes involved, and will not be deceived by surface narratives or diplomatic pleasantries. What landed on our soil that day was not merely a malfunctioning plane carrying confused soldiers. It was a message wrapped in operational ambiguity. And now the Sahel Alliance must respond with absolute unity and unwavering purpose, because the contest for Africa's future has entered a decisive new phase.